Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Welcome to Forces of Fashion.
Thank you.
I know I personally have a million things I want to ask these ladies, but we are talking today about the beauty industry and how much we have seen it change over the last few decades and very recently as well. And these ladies have been a part of that evolution. So a good place to start, I thought, is clean beauty. This is a term that a lot of people use, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Mm-hmm. With your two brands, Michelle has an incredible transparent fragrance brand. Obviously, you all know Stella's incredible work in sustainability with fashion, and her new skincare line has just come out. What does clean mean to you guys in those parameters with your beauty ventures? Let me start with you, Michelle.
Okay. Okay. So, you know, clean is one of those loosely defined terms, like so many of them, that starts out with very good intentions. Oh. But then by the time we're through with it, it's been twisted and morphed into whatever somebody's latest marketing campaign is. And so people become, rightfully so, you know, once again, very distrustful, and because of the lack of transparency. And so we actually we have never really defined ourselves as clean. We don't use that term to define Henry Rose, although of course we are placed in that category, which is fine, I think, for lack of a better alternative. But I think a lot of people think when they hear the word clean, that means safe. And clean and safe are not the same thing because it depends on who's defining what that is. So, and so we actually prefer to look at things more from a transparency and a safety point of view, and especially when it comes to fragrance, because there's absolutely no regulation when it comes to ingredient transparency.
Sure.
Now it doesn't mean that all fragrances are bad, and you know that they're dangerous, but it does mean that it's just that we simply don't know what is in them. And of course, if you don't know what's in something, you can't really be assured of its safety. So
a focus on safety for you, for sure. Mm-hmm. And you know, safety, I know, plays into a lot of what you do as well, Stella. Safe for people and the environment. Yes. Go ahead, get it.
I want to
get in there.
I mean, I think for me, and everything we've worked on at Stella McCartney, clean is being clean of conscience. I think for me, being we love animals, we love Mother Earth, we love also human rights. So to have a clear conscience in the supply chain, for me, is probably the most important meaning for that word. I don't think it's what anyone thinks it means in beauty or in fashion, but to be clean of conscience and to really have full transparency on where we're sourcing is probably one of the most important ways to have a sustainable and clean product. But also, human rights, I think, to have a clean bill of health for the people that are working with these chemicals and working, in this way. So I would say that's maybe my take on it.
And Michelle, you mentioned something, that there's very little regulations. And many of you likely know that regulations in cosmetics vary country to country, and they're different, and there's not a lot of them specifically in this country, but there's more in the EU. But a lot of people rely on other regulatory bodies to sort of, people have their nasties list, their, the no ingredients they won't use, that they've sort of self-regulated in some ways. And both of you have engaged in this. I know, Stella, working with LVMH, there's 2,000 ingredients that you guys did not put into these skincare products. And Michelle, I remember reading a really interesting article with you where perfumers have access to over 3,000 ingredients that they can pull from when they're creating fragrances, and you limited them to 300. Right? So, this idea of regulation and sort of, self-regulation versus the regulatory bodies that you're relying on to kind of create these safety standards.
Yeah, because, well, let's start with, in the EU, they've banned over 1,300 ingredients in cosmetics. In the United States, they've banned 11. It's been 84 years since there's been any kind of laws passed in Congress relating to cosmetics. And so when I started out doing this, I mean, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a perfumer, I'm not a scientist, had no idea what I was doing. And so I sought out the advice of the Environmental Working Group. And then once they've sort of been the de facto watchdogs for personal care because there are no government regulations on ingredient transparency or safety. And then once I was introduced to IFF, they actually introduced me to Cradle to Cradle, and I became familiar with them, and they are very strong in sustainability, and they have very strict and very high standards. And so I thought, okay, great, I'll have both. Well, what I didn't consider was once we edited out all of the banned ingredients from both organizations, we were left. Again, typically perfumers pull from a palette of over 3,000 ingredients to make their creations, and we gave them 250. And to start with,
Sure.
We were able to free up another 50, which is huge. It doesn't sound like a lot. So, it's like telling a master painter to paint a masterpiece and giving him 2 colors.
Right.
And they never lost their passion. They never complained. They looked a little tired every now and then, but. And the other thing that was amazing is we were all doing something that hadn't been done before, and watching these huge independent regulatory bodies, Cradle to Cradle, EWG, and IFF work together on this collaboration. They didn't always agree, but they had a common purpose, and actually a lot of the data that came out of that collaboration went into the green chemistry assessment tool that IFF had been working on. So I wish I had documented it, but I didn't.
And Stella, something interesting I think for you is, you have been breathing a lot of this for your entire life. Clear conscious, right? Things that are environmentally safe for your consumer. And you hold yourself to a very high standard, no matter what the standards might be. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that as far as formulating these skincare products.
Yeah, I mean, we've been self-regulating for 25 years at Stella McCartney, just purely because there's never been any real guidelines or, legal boundaries, really, certainly in the fashion industry, and very little in beauty, actually. So, yeah, as you said, Michelle, there's sort of 1,300 ingredients that are banned in the EU, and we took it to 2,000 just voluntarily, which is very weird. I can't imagine many people. I'm like, why did we do that? Are we crazy? But we basically have a very high level of, policing ourselves, and it's critical, really. But I think the biggest thing is we're not incentivized. Like in my everyday job as a fashion designer, I work with plant-based and vegan materials, meaning no animal glues, billions of animals are killed for the fashion industry a year, billions. And that is not only a horrible job, like I keep thinking to myself, for the minimum wage, I really would rather clean toilets than work in an abattoir or work in a factory that has to make these skins. But it's also the chemicals involved, they're hugely cancerous. It's a big, big problem, and so I think it's all connected. But we really need to be incentivized. At Stella McCartney, every non-leather bag or shoe or accessory that we bring into America is taxed at up to 30% more than a leather good. And if we just put a slither of pig leather onto that same product, the tax goes away, which is nuts. So it's literally nuts when I tell leaders at the G7 or COP26, and I'm sitting there, they can't believe it. It's so old-fashioned. And I think the point here of being forces of fashion, we're talking about the future. We're talking about the future of these industries, and beauty is not far off. We all know there's thousands of products still tested on animals. There's thousands and thousands of chemicals, and my beauty range that I've just launched now is so different than when I did it in 2006. I had 3 ingredients I could use, 3 packagings, and now I've got so much more, and refillables and recyclable, and the organic ingredients we can put in. There's just such a, you know, a larger scope. But we need to be incentivized, is my point, instead of penalized.
And timing is such an interesting point too. I think both of you have, you know, the same thing has probably been said to both of you, which is sort of, you know, there's no way you'll be able to do what you want to do with the limitations that you're setting, right? And yet here you are. And you know, you've also have tried to be here earlier. I know, you know, you launched a skincare line in 2007, I think it was, and Michelle, I know you've been at this for a while, and you made a real attempt at it in 2008, which at this point, you know, almost 15 years ago, and there's a lot of naysaying, right? But, you know, timing is such a huge thing, and I'd love to talk a little bit about sort of the landscape as it is now and how it's changed and what's made brands like yours, you know, look, the products are great, everybody, the products are great, but you know, people are much more susceptible to this kind of thinking now, and I'd love to just talk a little bit about how we've arrived here. And Stella, why don't you start, because you sort of, you know, you've been at it for so long.
I'm ancient. I'm really, really, really old. I think, you know, one of the main things is, I work in luxury. So for me, and that's really important to me, because I think that luxury, for me, luxury is being sustainable. That is, when people go, what's luxury to you? I'm like, it's being sustainable. Sleep. Luxury is sleep, being with my family, but after that, it's like really to be conscious and to be sustainable and kind, you know, in what you do. And I'm so privileged that I can work in that way. But I think it's critical that now there's just so much more available. You know, it's been such an interesting journey to see.
The luxury components is interesting, because
I think it is, because you shouldn't have to compromise.
Right, and there was sort of organic brands.
Yeah.
You know, you could go to a natural food store and probably get something like that. But you know,
I think there's always a compromise associated with working in a more sustainable way. Or I feel like you're getting a funky cream, like a cream that doesn't smell nice, doesn't feel nice, doesn't really have effective results. And so for me, that's critical. And sort of working in this way, I don't want to compromise at all on my standards, because I'm essentially being, you know, better to the planet. And I think that I lean into nature. You know, that's what I do. And I think in beauty, that's like everything comes from nature. I feel like everything that beauty is today in a chemical way surely like came from nature in the first place. And I'm just so excited. You learn so much more. I mean, I've just made a mushroom handbag, for God's sake, you know. And I think that that's where it gets super exciting. I think the technology and the way we can lean into, all, you know, take nature and technology and bring them together in today's age is fascinating.
And we're definitely going to come back to that, but I want you to answer a little bit of this too, Michelle. So you launched in 2019. Mm-hmm. You'd been at it for almost 10 years. You know, what clicked? I know the brand is doing well. You know, the perfumes are beautiful. You keep adding new scents. So what clicked in this environment, do you think?
Well, I think it's an evolution, and I think when I started out over 12 years ago, you know, it was, you know, even organic hadn't really taken a foothold, and, you know, there weren't that many, and then it was it was all about organic, and even then there weren't that many products, and they didn't perform.
Right.
And so I think there was this association between, let's say clean, because we're using that now, between clean and organic and better for you, and that they're not, I'm going to have to sacrifice in terms of how, and I've always had sort of two sets of makeup. You know, when I'm working in high def, I'm going to use the bad shit, because it's going to make me look better. But, you know, in real life, so it's percentages, right? Because, you know, your body can handle, it can sort of handle so much. And then the scales tip. And so, but in my real life, when I don't have to maybe look, I'm not sort of under that kind of scrutiny. You know, I use much cleaner products. But so I think that it was timing. People were just not that educated about it. I think people were not that interested in it. And when they did try products, they didn't perform so well. So I was sort of ahead of the curve. I was sort of too ahead of the curve. And I started out trying to do a licensing deal, because that's what actors do. And I started out approaching cosmetic companies directly, and they looked at me like I had 3 heads. They had no idea what I was talking about. Everybody said, even my biggest cheerleaders, you are doing this all wrong. You should do a makeup line. You should do a personal care line. You should do, and don't do fragrance. And I said, but those products are out there. I want to do something that hasn't been done. And
It's
so,
also the best thing in the world when somebody says, you can't do that, don't
Yeah.
do that. I'm like, come on.
why not? Because I knew, and I said, the technology is here, you know, and then the clean movement really started to take off. And so I think that the other thing that for me was very critical, I just didn't know anything about chemicals or perfumery or cosmetic business, the beauty business, and so I didn't know where to start. And when EWG started to develop their verified program, because I had gotten in touch with them 4 years before that, and they said, no, we can't help you, good luck. And 4 years later, they started their verified program, and so it gave me a guide, and it gave me guardrails to work within, and I was able to, because I knew I did not have the expertise, and I was making super big claims, super big safety claims. So I think it was just a combination of timing, really.
And let's talk about the scrutiny that you mentioned. Look, celebrity beauty is a thing. I'm sure you've all seen the number of celebrity-backed beauty brands that are launching not just every year, but literally every day. You know, I'm sure that's a blessing and a curse. You know, you've got the visibility, but you are held to a sort of a different set of standards. I don't know if you feel that way.
I mean, I don't feel like a celebrity. I'm a fashion designer. Like, that's what I did, you know, that's what I studied to do. I don't know, now it all blurs. It's like a fashion designer, celebrities, I don't know. I certainly, I don't know if I want to be a celebrity. But I think, obviously, yeah, of course, you know, I've grown up with a lot of celebrity, and it definitely gets your foot in the door, but if you can't have staying power, you don't stick around for very long in the room.
Right.
I think at the end of the day, we're here to sort of talk about the skincare, I guess, but I love the products that I've just launched. Like, I genuinely love them. I can't work on things. I can't sit and talk about them if I'm bullshitting and if it's not true and honest. Like, I have an allergy to it. I'll be shaking here if I'm lying. So at the end of the day, I don't think any of it really, like, all of it cuts through. My grandfather used to say, have staying power. And for me to be a female-founded, sustainable, vegan brand, like 22 years on, is crazy. You know, there's not many luxury houses where designers are even still alive with their name on the door, let alone being lucky enough to launch, you know, a sustainable skincare range.
Right.
So for me, I think, yes, the celebrity market is saturated, but I feel like we're all celebrities now, right? Yeah, but I mean, I feel like everyone's a celebrity now. Everyone's a photographer. We're living in a different world.
Every day.
And everyone should feel like a celebrity. You know, like, you should all feel fabulous all the fucking time.
But quality is quality. And
But I think, you know, I think at the end of the day, you can take the name off my products. I hope you still know they're a Stella McCartney product, and I hope that you want to come back for more. You know, that's the whole thing with the refills. I'm like, don't even, you know, every time you come back for more, you're coming back for a refill, and that halves your consumption. It like eliminates the waste after the third time. But truly, celebrity, like, actually just, you know, at the end of the day, it's about quality.
Say that, I would.
I literally made it up, Michelle. But it's the English accent. It helps in America. Let's just keep
It's a
just
word.
do it all day. It's the shh that's good, because you didn't know what I was going to say.
And it's interesting too, Michelle, obviously, you know, your brand's not called Michelle Pfeiffer Fragrances. You know, for those of you who don't know, Henry Rose, which is Michelle's brand, those are her children's middle names.
Very good.
Yeah. So, you know, there's something to that. You know, the brand can stand on its own with or without you. I'd venture to say there are plenty of people who don't know you're involved.
Yeah, there are, and nothing makes me happy.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love it.
It really. Oh, really? Well, also, it was so long ago when I started this. At the time, I was warned, and I was said, "Do not put your name on the product. Nobody wants to know about celebrity fragrances anymore." Well, that changed. So I listened, and I'm actually really glad that I did, and because it was very, very important to me that this brand stood on its own, that we were able to establish it as its own brand, separate from me. Of course, we launched as a direct-to-consumer only brand, so I knew my job was to get eyeballs on the website. That was my job, but I've never considered myself the face. I'm the voice, I'm the founder.
Although people are loving those social media videos, so dipping a toe.
So embarrassing.
The things we do.
The things we thought we'd never do. Yeah, and I wanted it to, when I chose the name, I didn't want it to sound like a startup. I wanted it to sort of stand the test of time and yet feel genderless and all of those things. So
I want to talk about transparency a little bit. You know, your brand is based around transparency. You can trace all of those ingredients. You know, they're EWG, which is the Environmental Working Group, verified. And you know, Stella, for those of you who don't know, Stella is just off a triumphant Paris Fashion Week. Her collection was 87%.
You know what? Actually, 87, which is ridiculous. But then after the show, we actually recalculated. It was 93.
93%.
wow.
I'm not clapping.
round of
I'm
applause
encouraging you all to
for
clap. No, but 93 like that is astonishing. I still can't, and well done to my team. Like that is, I'm so proud of them.
You should feel proud of that. And something that I think is so interesting about that, look, a lot of people don't come out until they can say, we're 100% this, you know, we've done it. You know, 93% suggests, you know, incredible work and also progress, and that, you know, you're not totally there, you're not perfect, but you're working towards it. And I think in that way you become a leader for, you know, the entire industry, that, you know, you're being very clear with everybody what you're doing. Here's where you're at. You want to get even, you know, want to be even more, and here's where you're at now. So, you know, I'd love to talk a little bit about that, sort of sharing with your consumers the transparency process and sort of then becoming a leader in the category.
I mean, working in this way, it's never stationary. It never stands still. You know, the fashion industry leans into about like 10 materials historically. We literally use 10 materials. It's so ridiculous. So when you're working in a sustainable way, I mean, we just launched on the runway. One of the things that got our numbers up, we worked on a pilot in Turkey for a regenerative cotton farm. So we'd always done organic cotton, but we were finally working on this pilot for regenerative, which I don't know if you guys know what regenerative is. It's basically when you bring, you know, all of the nutrients back to the soil. You actually are encouraging nature into the system of farming and cropping rather than eliminating nature. And it's just, it is the future. If we can get there, it'll save all of your kids' lives, you know. But it's amazing. That wasn't available before. So we were the first probably to put organic cotton on, and then now we're the first to put this regenerative on. I spoke before about the mushroom mycelium leather that we've been working on since 2016. We just got it on the runway a year and a half ago. And we're working on things all the time. We were talking about algae knit, which is this amazing technology that we've just worked on. We'll talk about fun later. But all of this stuff it's forever moving, and that's both challenging and fascinating. Like, I don't know if you find that everything is shifting all the time, and that's the reality of working in a sustainable and mindful way. Is we're not done yet, we're just starting, and something's better than nothing. Yeah. You know, to try and pretend that you're perfect, and it's just ridiculous. We're all creating products. You know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, the best thing to do is just sit at home and go off the grid and like eat peanuts, you know. So they're probably terrible too, actually, if you look at it. So.
What about you, Michelle? I mean, your whole business was built around transparency. You know, why was it so important to you to be able to lean on that, to have that be such a core of what you're bringing to market?
Well, because without knowing what's in something, you can't be assured of its safety, and period. And so we started out with the pledge to be 100% transparent with our ingredients. And, you know, I started out working with EWG, and then was introduced to Cradle, and, you know, and then I have to say we were a new company, we were a small company just starting out. I thought, okay, already hanging on by my fingernails, trying to get all of this done, and then taking on the sustainability part of it, which I wasn't really focused on in the beginning. And I'm really, really glad that we did. And we're not 100% sustainable, but I don't actually know what our number is. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to have to calculate what it is.
Better be 94, babe.
But I know that we're doing really, really well. And I know that we have achieved the gold standard for material reutilization from cradle to cradle, which is really, really good, and we're 98%, our formulations are 98% biodegradable, and all of our ingredients are between 90 and 100% green chemistry, And like I said, because of our work and our collaboration, not only was IFF able to gather data from that work, they now have this up and running, this green chemistry assessment tool, which now is paying it forward, and other brands are now able to use it, and also the time that it saves us. Instead, it was this laborious back and forth, and starting from, they didn't even know where to start, because EWG could say, you can't use that. Well, what can we use? We can't tell you that. We're not chemists. They'd be like, what? So it's been a really incredible process. And also, one more thing. Last year, by redesigning our packaging, and we already have like our caps are soy resin, biodegradable, 90%, our bottles are 90% recycled glass. Nobody else was willing to use them. We were the first and only people using them, but by redesigning our 50 ml boxes and shippers, we were able to achieve 26% less material waste. So still trying.
And these things are huge industry-wide. It changes the table stakes for every brand that is now coming. So this kind of work is incredibly important because it just changes the entire landscape. And I want to use the time that we have left to talk about what it is really doing, which is, setting us up for the future of these industries. Both the fashion and beauty industries, have a waste problem. And, a lot of these new incredible refill systems. Stella's line has a really beautiful one that's incredibly convenient. You can toss the refills in your bag.
A lot of that stuff's kind of like punishment, right?
I saw some of it
is
the
refills.
Yours is really easy and it's great. A lot of what you're doing with your bottle design, it is raising the table stakes for everyone else. And I want to talk a little bit about, we're running out of the resources we know. And we are leaning into technology that's things that Stella and Michelle are supporting. Stella has set up a fund called the SOS Fund, for anybody who doesn't know. It's worth a $200 million fund to basically fund brands that are looking for Series A and B level investment that are working in this space, right? So things around decarbonization, food and agricultural, sustainable materials. A couple companies that I know you've already invested in and are using are the mushroom leather we've already discussed, and a very cool algae-based yarn, which is biodegradable at a certain point.
Yeah, it's
correct?
Amazing.
So stuff like that, I just feel like I'd love to just spend what time we have left on that, and also this idea of biotechnology, so leaning into technology and science.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's allowed. I think it's hard, I think when I started, you go into this world and you're like, I don't want to kill animals, I don't want to kill the planet, I want to put nutrients back in the soil, and then you go and then you learn, it's like, then there's plastics, and there's all the, PVCs, and you're just learning all the time. I mean, we're not scientists, we're like, it's not what we do for our day job, but it feels more and more like I'm getting into that area. And I think for me, the technology is it is the future. It uses so much less energy, so much less water, it's so much more refined, it's so much more efficient, and less land mass in every sense. And I think it sort of came to me 10 years ago when some people were trying to grow meat in labs, and I was like, oh my God, that will save the planet. It will stop the mass murder of animals, which I know is an uncomfortable conversation for people, but that will be the conversation that everyone has next. I'm just letting you know. I hope. But the point being is that I was sort of alerted to this technology, and yeah, you mentioned the algae knit, which is this yarn made from algae, which is one of the fastest growing plants that we have. We're using a lot of algae in the skincare. It's an incredible, I mean, literally, it's the most amazing product from nature. But these technologies are just the future. And so for me, I've been working with them for so long. I've been developing them. The mushroom leather took me forever to get to a place where it wasn't like a piece of rock on your foot. And so for me, it's like to be able to use this fund to invest and to rise up and to celebrate these new young companies that will hopefully save us all, and then also use my kind of contacts and my know-how to inject it into industry and take it to my business partners at LVMH and try and make meaningful growth is really exciting.
And the science in these beauty ingredients is also really interesting. You have a biotech-backed, I believe it's a lingonberry extract in your skincare. And Michelle, you're using these incredible safe synthetic ingredients a lot of the time in your, these are lab-generated ingredients. So you've clearly had a very good experience working with them. I know that you tried to go all natural essences for a while, and you couldn't get the certifications that you wanted, and you couldn't get the feel that you wanted, the effect that you wanted. So if you can talk a little bit about that as well.
Is that going to go off in like 15 minutes?
I know. Are we going to get buzzed out of here? Are they going to play us off?
We only spoke too long. I'm not saying another word.
Go ahead. Go ahead. They're not going to. We won't cut you off.
I can ramble too. Well. Yeah, I actually thought in the beginning that my intention was to make an all-natural, organic, plant-based fragrance. And when I met with EWG, they said, that's great, you can do that, but you won't get a verification from us, which surprised me and took the wind out of my sails for a while. And the reason is because of the high level of allergens. And 30% of the population suffer from anywhere from really serious sensitivities to fragrance to anaphylaxis, and it's a real serious problem. And when you think about it, it takes like to create a rose oil, it takes 4,000 kilos to make 1,000 kilos of an essential oil. So the concentration of those rose chemicals are not something that we're supposed to be exposed to. It's too much for our systems. And so what technology can do now, which is really, really exciting, and what we're doing, and 90%, like between 90 and 100% actually of our fragrance ingredients are green chemistry, are biotechnology already. So, but what they can do now is they can take an organic ingredient, a natural ingredient, and they can literally make a bioidentical of that natural. And they can, and the other thing is because the EWG, the issues they have is some of these naturals have naturally derived hormone disruptors in them. So they can then take this and they can extract the molecules that are the endocrine disruptors, or the little pieces inside of this, and they can extract it and they can make it, and that's what a safe synthetic is. And that's really exciting for people. And that's why we are able to create a premium. We can use these safe synthetics with naturals because they're beautiful, but you can use them, some you can't use, they're just not safe at all to put in, but some of them you can use at safe levels. It's about concentration.
You guys might not be scientists, but you
know
a whole lot about this.
The great stuff about the biomimicry is it also with the rose, because we use that too. The biomimicry basically not only is it the sort of allergens and things, but the rose, to grow. You grow a ton of roses to get a tiny little bit of essence. Like there's a ton of water, a ton of land. It's so inefficient sustainably. Yeah. So the biomimicry there is a fantastic solution. It really is. It's really exciting.
I mean, it's exciting, and sounds like there's a lot more that we're going to see in this space. So hopefully we can do this again next year.
I want to add one thing just before we end. I just want to let you all know it's in your hands, guys. No, like, seriously, we'll sit here and we'll make you a beautiful fragrance, a beautiful product. We will not make you compromise on style and fashion. Like, you all look so beautiful, and I'm sure you all smell gorgeous. But this is in your hands. Like, I hand it over to all of you. And I think you should all feel really empowered and part of this conversation. This isn't just us here sitting talking at you. We're all in this together. So
yeah, and when you asked about what has changed, people have gotten smarter. People have become more educated. I think it has to do with the internet. And people's pocketbooks make change, and they vote with their pocketbooks. And when bigger companies see that there's consumer demand and profitability, that's when you really see the needle move.
Thank you guys so much.